Hey guys, Charles here, back again for the Chazinator YouTube channel. Just enjoying a lovely walk today, the countryside near where I live, and I thought of another kind of topic idea for a video about training, and the premise is that training is like a constant science. What I mean by that is you've always got to test and try different things in your training, even if you're a very experienced trainer, to find out what works well for you, or what works well for you at this time. So a bit more on that. Say your goal is to build strength, right? And I don't know, you have a kind of lower stress environment and you can really kind of put towards building strength. You're going to want to build with sort of lower reps, 5x5, 4s, 3s, doubles, maybe even the odd single, if you're peaking. And then the goal is, just to maybe you want to start your cycle at RP7, which means you have 3 reps left in the tank. And then slowly just add weight to the bar over time, and say you're doing a set of 100 for a 5x5, you slowly add weight over time, 102.5, 105, 107, 110, before you know it, you're at 120, for a 5x5, and it might not be as simple as that. It might be, not that linear in terms of, some days you're feeling worse, some days you're feeling better, and that's kind of the idea of the RP system anyway. On the days you feel good, you can push it a bit harder, because if you're going for an RP7 and say you're programmed to do 107.5, but actually it's feeling very easy that day, then you might increase it. You might go for 112 maybe, and the opposite could be true as well. But the idea is eventually you're progressing, and you might want to test that with some sort of AMRAP, like 5 rep max if you're doing 5s, or something very specific. Right, so that's kind of one premise, right, if you were training for strength. Now, if you're training for hypertrophy, you might be training with a higher rep range, 8s, 15s, 12s, anything in that rep range, and your goal might be RP based again, or reps in reserve, and the idea might be to, your progression might be to add a rep every week, or every session, or to add weight to the bar again, depending on what the move is that you're doing, and what works best for you with the given the exercises you're working with. So, to bring that into focus a little bit on what we're doing at the moment, I come from, as I've said before many times, a powerlifting background, strength training background, and RPE and fatigue have always been something I keep in mind, or started to keep in mind in kind of recent training, especially seeing as I found the body building style of training very fatiguing, because you tend to take it with a bit of a slower tempo, and really push closer to exhaustion sometimes. And this is where kind of the evolution always comes in, because you take that, for example, we were always planning for 8-week cycles, so given that, you might start the cycle on an exercise closer to the easier end, with the goal of progressing it as time goes on through the cycle, week to week. Let's take that again. Say you're doing 100 for 8 on the bench for 3 or 4 sets. The idea is you keep adding weight to the bar, and by the end of the cycle, if you keep adding weight to the bar, then what's that? You'd be at 115, 120, something like that. In theory, as long as everything went well. With my approach to kind of hypertrophy training, I try and add weight to the weight or rep to the bar every week, and it doesn't matter if it's pushing me closer to failure. That's kind of the approach I've been having. But one thing we hadn't been taken into consideration is that either Ben or myself, usually both of us, I don't know if this is due to training in the winter or in the garage or even though we have a heater or what, but we're always getting ill, and we're always getting ill around week 4, week 5 of training. So we'd be starting off again very conservatively with the idea to build for 8 weeks, but then at week 4 or 5 anyway, we'd both be getting ill, and we'd have to take either a deload or a week off to kind of let ourselves recover. And a thought kind of came to Ben actually, which was, well, then why are we starting so reserved? Because typically in the first week of training, for example, we'd be keeping everything at an RP7, everything very easy. But as Ben rightly pointed out, if we're only going to go for 4 or 5 weeks, then by week 4 or 5, if we get ill again, then the progression is a lot less. So why not start back at a heavier weight? For example, say with that bench again, you started at 100. By the end of the cycle, you only got to 107.5 or 110, right? Well, you don't want to start back at 100 again, considering you're just going to go up again, slowly. The momentum is going to take too long to build. So why don't you start back at 105, 107.5, depending on what you finished with. And so we've been hitting this cycle with that approach, pushing it a bit harder in the gym and not worrying so much about fatigue. When the fatigue comes, it comes, and if it comes 4 or 5 weeks in, then so be it, because we've been getting ill anyway. And will it work? Maybe. It's working at the moment, but who knows if it will work in the long run. But that's okay. That's the idea of this kind of video, is the constant kind of scientific process of training, constantly trying different moves, different exercises that work for you. You might have been doing bench for 3 cycles. I would count a cycle as one block of training, you know, 4 to 8 weeks, you know, microcycle, and then a mesocycle, you know, there's a bigger cycle containing all of those exercises. Now, if you stop making progress on that bench for all those cycles, and you finish this mesocycle, you know, group of cycles, and you know, you look at it and you realize, well, actually, I've been trying everything, but close grip bench isn't working anymore. I'm not making any gains on this exercise, not progressing in any way. Then maybe it's time to swap out bench for now for a different exercise. What's your weakness? Are you weak at the bottom? Are you weak at you wouldn't be weak at the top because you've been doing close grip for a while, but say you're weak at the bottom, why don't you go to a wider grip bench? You know, try that for a while. Why don't you do dumbbell bench? You know, why don't you do deep deficit push-ups for a while? Try and experiment, you know, bring different things into your training. Now, there is something to be said for keeping the same exercises going for, you know, a good period of time. You know, if you're still progressing on an exercise, well, don't change it. You know, if it's working for you, then it's working for you. There's no need to change it. But, you know, I think there is always room to experiment and chop and change your training for better results. Your circumstances always are changing, you know, your life factors, things that might be adding to your stress. You know, you might have a period of time where you're getting lots of sleep, you're eating well, and in that period of time, well then, you might find great progression, and the cycle might go for a long time. So lots of things to consider here, and just remember, there's no kind of right answer. My suggestion would be to just keep trying different things and see what works best for you. And really, that's my advice for this video. Things are always changing, including you and your age and everything like that, and that might impact your training, and you might find either a worse or better intensity, technique, whatever it might be, different exercise, different splits. You know, different split might work better for you. You know, at the moment, Ben and I are doing a very strange split. We've found that intensity works a bit better for us than volume at the moment, and we're doing on the lower end of volume. We do push-pull legs, and then we do upper lower, you know, and we've kind of stumbled onto that from doing push-pull legs 6 times a week. Now we're doing 5, but it's working. You know, even though we're just doing one exercise, 3 sets of chest on the upper day, and then obviously we get in the rest of that volume. We do another 6 sets of chest on Monday, so it's only 9 sets, but we've found that works really well for us at the moment. And the incline dumbbell press we're doing on that upper day is forever going up at the moment, so we're doing great. Basically, that means it's working. And so I suppose that's my advice to you on this video. Things can always change, you know. Obviously, don't try and change things all the time. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying, you know, if things are stale or something's not working, then you can try something else. Anyway, I hope that helps. And thanks for listening.